Welcome back to A Slice of News, where I cut you off a slice of news. Department of War, a name that hasn't been in use since the late 1940s, is back. President Donald Trump has signed an executive order reverting the Department of Defense back to its old name of the Department of War, citing that he wants to present a more aggressive and proactive image on the global stage, and saying that the Department of Defense is too woke, and we have to go back to the name we used when we won all those wars. This forthcoming name change would require changing over 700,000 facilities, spanning 40 different countries and every one of the states in our country. That means changing letterhead, that means changing logos on official items, all the way down to changing stuff in the Pentagon gift shop. On top of being massively inconvenient, it's going to be massively expensive. All that is going to cost millions of dollars, all so he can look tougher, which of course is complete nonsense because it's not exactly going to intimidate any of our foreign enemies, and if anything, it's just going to embolden them, since if our Defense Department is now a war department, that implies that our desire to fight wars, which is just going to cause them to want to start wars, putting at risk the delicate stability we have internationally already. A Department of War makes us sound like a warmongering nation, which is not what we want. When you get down to it, this is all just political posturing. It's all just image, and Donald Trump is all about just image. It doesn't matter, and it may doubly not matter, since to do this he would need congressional approval, something which I am sure he knows and will do everything in his power to circumvent, but ultimately is likely not going to succeed if it does actually go before Congress. But of course, this speaks to a larger issue, which is that the administration is trying to shape this country into something that it's not. We eschewed the Department of War label because we wanted to frame our military as a force for national defense, not one that's going out looking for fights. In his press conference announcing his desire to rename the Department of Defense, Trump cited how we won World War I and we won World War II and we won all those other wars. But the important thing to note there is that we didn't go into those armed conflicts looking to fight. We didn't start those conflicts. If anything, we entered into them to end them in a time where intervention was necessary. It wasn't something which we intentionally sought out to fight. We've never been a nation who went out looking for conflict. But trying to rebrand a military of defense as a military of offense sends the wrong message. And all this coming from the so-called anti-war president who wants a Nobel Peace Prize and to stop the war between Ukraine and Russia. So this is really undermining that image. But I guess what he really wants is that image of a tough guy, so he needs a Department of War to back up his tough guy image. In reality, this whole thing just seems weak. It's a waste of time, it's a waste of money. It doesn't really accomplish anything useful, and it's really largely useless. But perhaps that's part of the idea. It's just a big headache to implement. But it also serves as yet another distraction from the mounting pressure to release the Epstein files that, if released unaltered and unredacted, assuredly has Donald Trump's name as well as numerous other Republicans within. So trying to get this whole Department of War rebrand going is just tying up attention and resources and not having people look back in his direction on the Epstein situation. But when you get down to it, we're not a nation that needs a Department of War. Armed conflict is something we should seek to avoid, not encourage. In many ways, Department of Defense was more than just a name change. It was a statement that our military was for defense, not only of the homeland, but as a tool to defend our allies from their enemies abroad. Part of what made our armed forces strong was their ability to defend, not to hurt. Turning it back to a Department of War reframes our military as a weapon that we can use to threaten, which I suppose in part is part of the idea. They want to make the military out as something that we can use to threaten, like an aggressive weapon. And that's just not something that we should want. That's not who we are as a nation anymore. And really, it makes us look bad, not only to our enemies abroad, but to our allies abroad. It makes us out as this aggressive bully itching for a fight. That's just not someone many of our allies are going to want to deal with. To backslide into a 20th century mentality that we are there should be wanting to distance ourselves from, not embrace and return into. And when you get down to it, even if you remove the obvious fact that this is a distraction from the Epstein situation, how does this actually help anyone? Is it going to bring down food prices? Going to bring down healthcare costs? Going to do anything for the affordability of housing? There are so many situations and issues here domestically that aren't being dealt with that a name change of a department is completely pointless and useless. So President Donnie can feel like a tough guy? If anything, this is just a sign of a leader who doesn't know how to lead. You can only make surface level changes when we need substantive, deep level change, which he cannot provide because he is a weak man and a weak leader. His desperate attempt to show strength, he's really showing weakness. One of the things you learn in martial arts is they are techniques intended for personal defense. They are not intended to go out looking to fight so you can use them. And that's what a Department of Defense is. It's saying, yeah, I can fight if I have to, but I don't want to go out and fight simply to fight. Yes, our military strength can be seen as a deterrent and saying, don't fight me because I'm strong. But it's also not saying, I'm strong so I can fight you if I feel like it. He wants to appear aggressive to not look weak, but in his desire to be aggressive, it makes us look weak. Someone who's always out looking for a fight is not someone that people consider to be strong. Someone who is truly strong attempts to avoid conflict unless it is absolutely necessary. A Department of War is not something that says, I want to avoid conflict. We should want to be an example of strength through non-violence, or at least not being proactive in that violence. I think we as a nation have outlived our need for a Department of War. We had a Department of Defense that was used to defend. We're not the cowboy walking around with a six-shooter looking for a chance to use it. We're not a nation of aggressors. We shouldn't seek to be. Also, as a president who ran on cutting out government waste, this is textbook government waste, both a waste of time and a waste of money. But at the same time, I think we all know that he was never really concerned about government waste. It was all really just an excuse to cut funding for the stuff he didn't like. I suppose, if anything, this is just yet another example of how disingenuous those claims were. But when you really get down to it, this Department of War is just a step backwards. Not only literally it's a return to an archaic name for the Department of Defense, but it's a step backwards in our national identity. We're no longer a war nation that needs a Department of War to prepare itself for the next armed conflict and justify its massive military budgets in preparation. Just sends the wrong message, both to those abroad and those here in our nation. One that says that we're all about war. We should be all about peace. Our strength didn't come from how many guns we had, or tanks, or planes, or big boats with guns on them. It's about having all that and not looking for an excuse to use them. Strength didn't come from instilling fear. Strength built through threats is not true strength. When you really get down to it, that's not who we are. I'd argue that's never who we've been, but it's certainly not who we are now in the 21st century, when those days of war are just part of the historical record. Yes, we may have triumphed in those armed conflicts, but that doesn't mean we should want to look for new ones, for new glory in war. The days of mutually assured destruction are in the past. Changing it to a Department of War makes it seem like he wants it to become our new present and our new future. And that's just not what we're about. It's not who we are. It's not who we should want to be. Times have changed. We've outlived our need for a Department of War, and we don't need it to come back. Something our Commander-in-Chief would do well to consider. I doubt those ideas are anywhere in his head. And with any luck, his attempts to circumvent congressional approval will fail, and Congress will not approve this change. See it for the unnecessary, costly distraction that it is. That's my hope anyway. So that's it for this episode of A Slice of News. I've been your host, Mr. Slice, and until next time when I cut you off another slice of news.